Academy. I will be your guide today.
As I said, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to this event, marking to this very day the 250th anniversary of the Swedish Freedom of Speech Act. I will soon come back to describe the act a bit more in detail, but we will start by watching a short film, The History of Silence, which will set the stage for the discussions that we will have a bit further on. So I would suggest, without further ado, that we start the film now.
Just idag, den 2 december 2016, är det 250 år sedan den svenska tryckfrihetsförordningen instiftades, som gav varje enskild svensk medborgare rätt att i tal och skrift framföra sin åsikt. I förlängningen kom förordningen att ligga till grund för FN:s mänskliga rättigheter, artikel 19, rätten till yttrandefrihet. Men hur kom det sig då att just det lilla landet Sverige
I believe that is a very strong statement of how we would sense the world if we didn't have freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and a big thank you to the Raoul Wallenberg Academy for doing this for us. As you could see in the film, this very day is the 250th anniversary of the Freedom of Expression Act adopted by the Swedish Parliament. It's an important landmark to honor, since the belief upon which it's based remains just as relevant today, maybe even more so. This is because the freedom of expression and information are prerequisites for democracy, for debate, for scrutiny, and for innovation. Yet, as we celebrate the act today, we regret that around the world, the human rights and fundamental freedoms it set out to safeguard are being increasingly threatened. In many places, democracy, the rule of law, and respect for human rights are being undermined, and the space for journalists and civil society is increasingly shrinking. The result is silence. This stifles debate and the critique of ideas, the very opposite of development and freedom, with far-reaching consequences for global citizens. It is easy to be inspired by the founding figure of this act, member of the Riksdag, Anders Chydenius, who in 1766 championed this historic fundamental law in Sweden. This law predates both the United States Declaration of Independence and the French Revolution. Chydenius was a priest in Gamla Karleby. It's today called Kokkola. It lies in Österbotten, which is today part of Finland. He was an early advocate also for free trade and became famous when he criticized the then prevailing policy of high trade barriers. Many of the wealthy in the big towns and cities became even richer, while life became more difficult for ordinary people, many of whom starved in those days. This was a major problem in remote Österbotten, and this is why he was sent to the Riksdag by his constituency. And there, in Stockholm, Chydenius argued in the same way for freedom of the press and openness in government administration as he did for free trade. He said that without the principles of freedom of expression and information, a small elite in Stockholm would continue to hold all the influence and all the wealth. The periphery would always be brushed aside. He made this argument so convincingly that the Riksdag took action, agreeing on the Freedom of Press Act on December 2nd in 1766. What is it then that makes the Freedom of the Press Act so special? There are four main principles, which actually still today lay the foundation for Sweden's strong tradition of freedom of expression. The first one being the most natural: state censorship was abolished. Previously, all written material required advance permission prior to publication. It was often difficult to obtain permission if the text wasn't flattering towards those in power. The second is the principle of public access to official documents. As a general rule, all documents of the authorities would no longer be secret, but public. Previously, it would be punishable to print and spread documents. And just to give you an example of how strange this regulation was, even parliamentary records in those days were classified as secrets. Third principle, shifting the emphasis from prohibited to permitted. Previously was, as I said, prohibited to print anything without prior special permission. And now instead almost everything was permissible until such times as a court would rule that it found a breach of the law in their publication. All state documents could be read and distributed as long as they were not classified as secret. And fourthly and finally, freedom of the press was guaranteed in a fundamental law under the Constitution. Ordinary laws normally set boundaries for citizens, but a fundamental law sets the boundaries for the state. The state may not breach a fundamental law, even by enacting new legislation, as that legislation would be invalid. These principles, 250 years ago, represented a fundamental change in the relationship between the state and its citizens. It reflected principles that were formulated during the Age of Enlightenment in the 18th century in Europe. People have intrinsic rights, and the state has a responsibility and an obligation to defend those rights. The purpose of the Act was to strengthen the influence of its citizens. The ability to respond to the desire to express one's views has probably never been easier than it is today, as a result of the internet and social media. Almost half the world's population today is under the age of 25, many of whom are here today, and a special welcome to you. They are the leaders of tomorrow, and they have a lot to say. Together with this generation, we must protect and defend these principles and a world where different voices are allowed to be heard. So let us jointly today make the 250th anniversary become a starting point for a new era of freedom of expression. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Per. I have the honor to present our Deputy General Secretary, Jan Eliasson.
Thank you very much, Michel, and thank you, Per, for this very good introduction. I think it was striking, wasn't it, when these figures were there and you saw something wrong with the sound. And of course, that was the whole message. You should have an international version of this, because the people who were on that screen were famous Swedish actors, the newscaster, one of the most famous ones. Our Foreign Minister, Margaret Wallström, was a young girl in one of the pictures when she was an activist in Parliament, the youngest parliamentarian. I just remember that. But I think it was such a fantastic demonstration of the importance of free speech, but also the importance of the word. The word. If you think about it, all around you around this table, you probably have the word as your most important tool. If you look at your profession and how you spend your day, it's how you speak and how you write that will influence matters. So I think we should really realize that the power of the word is so enormously important. Actually, to the young people in the room, I say collect words. Collect words. It's like tools that you have in your hands. As a negotiator, you will know, as some of the ambassadors here, that to shift a word from one to another very quickly without losing your negotiation position is part of our game, isn't it? But then you need to know 5 synonyms of something that you want to express. So I discovered when I was a young boy that I actually collected words. My father had an encyclopedia at the side of my bed, and I read that encyclopedia with a torchlight at night. I didn't go from A to Z, but almost in that encyclopedia. And I've felt now at the end of my diplomatic life that this has helped me tremendously to have this affection for words and even love for words as your main tool. Remember, the words are so precious, and we have to use them right in order to open the doors and not close the doors. So congratulations on your 250th birthday today. Fantastic. 1766. I remember when I learned that in school. I probably celebrated the 200th anniversary. And it took some time before this then turned into the Universal Declaration. Article 19, on the 10th of December 1948, the document that my colleagues know that I always carry the charter in my pocket, but today I'm going to be innovative. I'm going to pull out from my pocket the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But I will tell you a story about this. This little brochure, which could be bought in 1950 in New York for 25 cents, was given to a lady, a student. She was 20 years at the time. She gave it to me then when she was 75. In the end of the 90s, I had appeared on Swedish television, probably under the tutelage of that woman. And I talked about human rights. And the lady thought that I spoke, she said, so well that she gave me this brochure. And I said, how nice to get the brochure with the Universal Declaration from 1950. But then she said in the letter to me, I've had it in my library since then because, 20 years old, I went to the seminar and the woman who was chairing the meeting was such a fascinating lady. So I went up to her with my newly bought brochure and asked, could you write your autograph? And she did. So here in this one it says, with good wishes, Eleanor Roosevelt. My American friends tell me I should put this in a bank safe. To have the driving force behind the Universal Declaration of Human Rights have her autograph is pretty precious for me. So I will put it back in the plastic folder that I keep it in the office. Before I start, I also want to pay tribute to the Raoul Wallenberg Academy. Sarah will speak, I think, later about this, but I just want to say that if you look at Swedish role models, you easily land in the names of course, Dag Hammarskjöld, Olof Palme, and others who served the United Nations, Hans Blix, and others who are well known. Some of us have tried to work in the same tradition. But one name that is definitely on the role models list for most Swedes, but also many others, is Raoul Wallenberg, who saved tens of thousands of lives, Jewish lives, in the end of the Second World War in Budapest. And he did it with such fantastic energy and courage and determination. For me, he is really a great role model. And I was fortunate enough as a young diplomat to deal with this case. We tried to find out what happened to him. He disappeared in a black sedan on the 17th of January 1945 from Budapest. And then we lost track of him. He probably ended up in Lubyanka prison outside in Moscow. And then it gets blurry. The hope was always that we would find him alive. We never did. We gave up, hoping that he would live. He was born on the 4th of August to 1904, so realistically we had to give up that hope. But we will never give up to keep his memory alive. And this Raoul Wallenberg Academy is really one of the best signs of this, because they also bring out the message to the schools and young people in Sweden to a wonderful degree. And I'm fortunate to be close to the family since I worked with the file, and my wife, Kerstin, went to school together with the niece of Wallenberg, namely Kofi Annan's wife, Nan. Nan Annan is the daughter of Raoul Wallenberg's sister. So I've had it at the kitchen table and with friends, some of my best friends, of course, including Kofi Annan. And I was very honored to give a speech on the 17th of January, 1995. 50 years after his disappearance, the parliament in Sweden gave a ceremony with the Prime Minister speaking, Carl Bildt. No, it was Ingvar Carlsson, and the leader of opposition, Carl Bildt. And then the family asked me to speak. So if you are interested in the subject of Wallenberg, one speech that I've written every word and every comma, it's that speech from 17th of January 1995. A long introduction just to tell you how very glad I am that you bring to this table some of the most prominent ambassadors who have, all of them, very strong records in the area of human rights. I see all of you here, the friends here. I will not repeat you in case I miss any of you, but I really want to say how grateful to see you here at this meeting together with the Swedes who are here, but also the young people from New York School, I understand, who are here, who are going to continue this work of youth's role in spreading the word of human rights. I would say we live in a day and age where we really must remember that the accountability that we have in this organization is basically to the people we serve. The first 3 words of the UN Charter to you Americans, I would say, is the same as the American Constitution, except that we speak about people in plurals. So it's in the Constitution, you, we the people, and UN has we the peoples. And it is the people's peace, the people's development, the people's dignity, human rights that we are to preserve. And I think it's absolutely crucial now at this stage in history where we will have to prove the value of internationalism, that we, in the world where you have very strong forces of nationalism with strong populist messages, looking at the outside world and universal values as something suspicious at least, or even hostile, that is a time for us to really stand up for the universal values of the United Nations. I was proud to be president of the General Assembly in 2005 and 2006, and of the formula that we then established, which my colleagues know by heart, of course, the formula being there is no peace without development. But there is no development without peace, and none of the above without respect of human rights. These 3 pillars is actually what holds this organization together, but I also would say that holds individual nations together. Because nations cannot hold together, and an international system cannot be resilient if we don't have work at the same time on maintaining peace, bringing about fighting inequalities and poverty, and of course standing up for the human dignity and standing up for human rights, the rule of law, and strong institutions, which I think is a very basic element of the rule of law structure. This work has to be done at the same time, because if one of these pillars is weak, the whole structure falls apart. Just look at situations like Syria, Yemen, South Sudan, countries with great potential who have gone down the drain because one of the legs or pillars falls down and then the others follow suit. So therefore, the work to keep the human rights dimension very strong in the UN is very important, both from the perspective of coming back to the basic truth that we are to serve the peoples, but also for maintaining peace and bringing about development. I'm absolutely convinced more and more that we will not be able to reach lasting peace and development shared, or prosperity shared, if we don't take as a starting point the human dignity and the human rights dimension. And that's why I'm very proud to have taken an initiative on behalf of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon 3 years ago, an initiative which was called Human Rights Up Front, which is meant both to raise the level of awareness of human rights in the whole organization, but also to see human rights violations as a first warning sign of things going wrong. When you hear the first vibrations in the ground, the father is tortured, a child doesn't go to school because of the color of his or her skin, or ethnic belonging, or religious group, or tribe, that's when we have to act. Why should we wait for the atrocities to occur when we should and could act at the stage of human rights violations? It's a rhetorical question, but I think the answer is obvious. We have to act earlier. Otherwise, we in the United Nations will lose control. Our colleagues, our ambassador colleagues know that the bill for humanitarian action and peacekeeping is $28 billion a year, dealing with the symptoms, while very little is done to prevent conflicts and to do post-conflict work. So here is a great task, not least for you young people, to have instituted, live up to a culture where when you discover something going wrong, act early. It goes on all levels, both even on the personal level and on the professional level. Whatever you do, act early. Don't wait for things to go wrong. It's like a wound you have. You get a wound, you don't care about it until it gets infected. Let's clean up the wound when it happens. And let's give tribute to the dietist about heart attack, who tells you to eat an apple and sleep well and tell the truth and all that to feel good. She is doing as important work on fighting heart attacks than the surgeon does a triple bypass. In other words, we have to institute a culture of prevention. And I'm very glad that we now have this interest in young people running with a baton. I think also now when I look back at my many years in diplomacy, I feel that we need to take a different attitude to how we work with issues related to young people. I have a sense that we have had a rather paternalistic way of looking what can we do for young people. I think we have to shift syndrome, shift concept. I think we should more and more think about what can we do with young people? Youth unemployment, education patterns, ideas even of entrepreneurship. There is so much to pick up from young people. I have a 10-year-old, I forgot my cell phone in the office. That's a disaster, you know that. But my 10-year-old Agnes teaches me more about this iPhone than anyone else in the world. In 10 seconds, she teaches me a new function on my iPhone. And this is just an example of how much we could gain from now bringing work with young people instead of saying, when you grow up, you're going to do this and that. I think we are in a hurry. Also, from an existential reason, look at climate change. So I think the fact that you have brought around this table very skilled ambassadors dealing with for instance, all of you have produced the Sustainable Development Goals. Yeah. Extremely new, important tool for us for development, but also goes into both peace and security and human rights. And that you have young people now who are going to work to bring out the message of human rights in a world where we, in many cases now see a shrinking space for the word, for expressions. Civil society in far too many countries, even in some democratic societies, are seeing challenges and seeing the shrinking space for civil society. And journalists live a very dangerous life. 600 journalists approximately have been killed as journalists doing their role since 2005. Most of them are national journalists, not international. And the 600 people have been stopped to, in fact, be quiet, very quiet, as you saw in that film. And therefore, I really hope that you keep this banner very high, and that what you do is then increasing the space for each and all of us. If we don't defend this in our generation, it may be lost. This is not taken for granted. We have to work every day to make sure that those values that are written into this Universal Declaration and the UN Charter, we have to fight for them. It doesn't come for free. And we sometimes have to take risks. We sometimes have to show courage. We have to stick out our necks in situations that may be very, very difficult. Many of you have experienced that, fighting totalitarian systems. And therefore, it's so wonderful to see this great combination of active diplomats in the most, I would say, one of the most important arenas. I would say the most important international arena, and young people on this table. So I thank you, Michel, for arranging this meeting, celebrating this birthday, giving us reason to make these reflections, and to also thank the Raoul Wallenberg Academy for doing this, and my dear friend Per Thöresson, who was with me in Nagorno-Karabakh when I mediated in the conflict around Nagorno-Karabakh, shuttling between Yerevan and Baku. Sometimes pretty risky. We had to land on a helicopter. We were under attack. But we did survive, evidently, as you see today. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jan Eliasson. Now we shall make a small ceremony, because as you see in front here, there is a cube which is in a normal 10 feet to 10 feet in steel, and this cube will be spread all around the world. And today there has been an opening in Stockholm and in the town Lund, south of Sweden, and it's inside, it's a film which you have seen today. So I'll ask Jan to make an opening for this cube to start next year for human rights. And it's it's difficult to reach the cube from here.
Yeah.
So I have a small one here.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that I would do hurdle.
Yeah, and it says silence. Yeah. And if you open it, it says no silence. So if you can just open it.
Silently?
Yeah, you can use a pencil or something.
There we
And inside this black cube of paper, but it should be steel, it's the film.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's a gift to you, but also if you can just
so
say,
this is the film.
yeah,
Here it is.
yeah,
Modern technology.
right.
I had to ask Agnes about this.
And it's a text says,
Non-silence.
right. So,
You should have a positive word.
yeah.
You should have a competition. What is the opposite to non-silence? Speaking
Yeah.
up, speaking up,
Yeah.
standing up for
We
whatever.
were thinking of the pistol.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's you
But
should
we
have
were-
a positive word. Non-silence. But I see your point about it.
Okay, we were thinking of the pistol outside. It's a non-violence.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
right,
so,
right.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So now it's
Yeah.
officially opened.
Right. Now I would like to introduce Sarah Bohman. She's the head of Raoul Wallenberg Academy.
Yes, thank you, Michel. And thank you, Jan Eliasson, for your kind words about our organization and the work we're doing in Swedish schools and now also worldwide. And this Universal Declaration of Human Rights is really a milestone document in the history of civilization. It's a common standard for how all people and all nations should treat each other and behave. And every one of us has the responsibility to make sure that these rights are protected every day. But that's easier said than done, right? How do you do that? Maybe speak up every time you hear something unfair. Maybe speak up every time you hear something that's wrong. But an important thing is that one prerequisite for protecting human rights is that we are aware of which they are. If we don't know our rights, we won't know when they are being violated or when we are violating other human beings. Sadly, we see on the news every day how human rights are being violated and how xenophobia is spreading all over the world. We're facing huge challenges when it comes to migration and integration. What we need today is more brave individuals standing up for a humane society. One who certainly did so was Raoul Wallenberg. As you heard from Jan, he was a young man who went his own way. And his deeds in Budapest during the Second World War are unique. Through courage, knowledge, creativity, and great organizational skills, he was able to save thousands of Jews from the Holocaust. Here he is. And today, the Raoul Wallenberg Academy, a non-profit organization based in Stockholm, inspires new generations to create change and make a difference, inspired by the deeds and destiny of Raoul Wallenberg. The purpose of our organization is to encourage young individuals to take actions for equal rights and to find the courage to make a difference. Because it's not easy, it demands courage. And we do this by providing tools, educations, and challenging school projects using Raoul Wallenberg as a role model. Our vision is a humane society where every person, each of every one of us, can make a difference. And since 2001, we have been working with supporting young leaders to take action. And the last 4 years, we have grown from educating about 50 students a year in Sweden to now reaching about 8,000 students through our programs and projects. And we have developed a method and a framework that really engage students. And is based on cultivating the 4 skills that positive change makers like Raoul Wallenberg have in common. And those are firstly empathy, civil courage, leadership, and cooperation. The first 2 are important in the process of enabling the individual to start making a difference. And the last 2 is necessary in order to expand the impact of the action. We work with all these 4 skills But as we believe that every individual can make a difference, we put extra emphasis on the first two, to build empathy and civil courage. What we do is a lot about helping students to get involved regarding these issues about human rights, about making a difference. But we do this by helping schools to implement the work on human rights as a natural part of the school's mission. But who would have guessed that our secret weapon to reach students and to help teachers is a 10 feet high cube made of steel? This is a picture from Sweden where the cube is outside a school in Lidingö, actually the place where Raoul Wallenberg was born. Before I tell you more about the project, I want to show you this short 3-minute film where you can see some images from the cube. Technology, you know.
Meningen med kuben är att få folk att inse att mänskliga rättigheter är något att sträva efter.
Jag tänker att ett sånt här projekt skapar en möjlighet för elever att tänka utanför boxen. Särskilt de elever som får tänka fritt ut efter vad mänskliga rättigheter är.
Det behövs därför man måste jobba med mänskliga rättigheter och medmänskliga skyldigheter. Det här att hur uppför vi oss mot varandra, att ta ställning. Att visa lite civilkurage. I Gränstorp har vi ju haft Svenskarnas parti och då kände vi att nu är det dags, vi måste göra någonting. Vi har bestämt oss för att jobba med inte bara skolan utan föreningar, företag, kommunanställda, chefer, allmänheten, alla. Alla är med och jobbar i det här KUB-projektet.
So 4 years ago, something else started. Thank you. So 4 years ago, we started this so-called CUBE project to ensure that our youth are aware of the human rights and to encourage more young people to take action. And the cubes are now spreading internationally. Together with the Swedish Institute, the Raoul Wallenberg Academy are now starting the project in Serbia, France, Hungary, and here in the US. So many of you in this room who are students will work with this CUBE project next year. And the worldwide campaign towards schools has the mission to inspire next generations to work together for human rights and to stand up for them. A generation that aren't quiet, a non-silence generation. So the successful project consists of 30 of those black steel cubes, one for each of the 30 declarations of the human rights, which have been sent to selected schools around Sweden. And through the project, schools get support to work strategically to fulfill their objectives regarding democracy, and moral values. And at the same time, the students are encouraged to make a difference on their own. The cube is delivered to the school totally empty and is then filled with art installations by the students. Here is one example. The students get to use their creativity and freely interpret how they can stand up for their assigned human right. And this is done inside the cube using all types of media, text, images, film, theater, or installations, and is based on the perspective how every person can make a difference. Here's another example how the cube can look like. The project also comes with a digital platform and a toolbox with educational materials for the teachers to use directly in the classroom. And the teachers are invited to inspiring network gatherings throughout the year to learn from each other. So the project takes place all over Sweden during the whole year, but with the grand finale on Raoul Wallenberg's Day, August 27th. Then we bring back all the 30 cubes and gather them in Kungsträdgården in Stockholm for a public exhibition. This year we gather over 1,000 students and 100 teachers for a full day in Stockholm with workshops, music, and meetings. And the most amazing part about this day was to see that the students really realized that we are part of a bigger context. We're part of something bigger than just our school and our small community. The cubes really create something spectacular. It brings real engagement for the students. We're bringing them something concrete and something real to work with. Also, importantly, we're creating an additional audience for the students' work, which create motivation. A project like this Cube project allows students to think outside the box and to bring a wider perspective on these really hard questions. And now we are bringing them also a global perspective, where Swedish schools get partnership schools abroad, so they can start global conversation about the human rights in different countries. And they're all working within the same Cube project. Lastly, I want to give you a story about an example of the effects we have seen with the project. And it's about the municipality Grästorp, as you saw in the movie. It's a small community in Sweden where a couple of years ago a neo-Nazi party was elected into the municipality. So the municipal leaders at that time decided that they needed to take actions and work with human values. They called us up at the Raoul Wallenberg Academy and said, please, help us. What do we do? We assigned them a cube, and they put it on this display on a square at the town center in Grästorp for everyone to see. And they involved the whole community, the business association, the library, the schools, and the kids. Here are some kids that went to Stockholm for the exhibition. And during their work of working with Article 9, the right to fair treatment, one of the girls at school, Noor at the far bottom left, got an expulsion order. Immediately, their classmates reacted. Was this really a fair treatment? They had been speaking about the right to fair treatment the whole year, and then this happened. Their classmates, who've been living in Sweden her whole life since she was a child, had to move. No, that didn't seem fair to her classmates. So they organized a demonstration involving almost a third of the whole population in their village, and they all gathered for human rights. In the end, Noor and her family got to stay in Sweden. But the story of the engagement didn't stop there. The cube moved on to another school, another place, but the commitment of the people did not disappear. On the contrary, the cube had started running conversation and lasting engagement. Last week, I actually got a call from the municipality again, and they sent us a letter. Please let me read a short abstract from it. Please, Raoul Wallenberg Academy, Morgan Johansson, Minister for Migration, and Foreign Minister Margot Wallström, help us to fight for our Afghan youth here in Grästorp and give them an opportunity to stay with us. We cannot be responsible for all Middle East teenage boys said the Swedish Minister of Migration, Morgan Johansson, in a Swedish news show, SVT Agenda. But in Grästorp, we can take responsibility for the 35 teenage boys who live with us and come from the Middle East. Raoul Wallenberg dared to challenge. We in Grästorp also dare to challenge. And this is just one example of the powerful effects we have seen in the project, that people get together, find a common cause, and fight for it, and speak up, because that's the first step of making a difference. After these 4 years of doing the CUBE project and working with the Raoul Wallenberg Academy, we know that we are making an impact. We are spreading the knowledge about human rights, raising the awareness, and we are creating unique meeting places and helping schools to fulfill the vital work on values. And today we're all gathered here to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Freedom of Speech Act. And we all have a shared responsibility to ensure that this act will continue to be celebrated in the future. That we protect this freedom of speech and the rest of the 29 declarations. The CUBE project may be one piece of the puzzle to strengthen the next generation. And I am proud and I am happy to be here today and announce that more students in schools worldwide now have the chance to unite, to uphold human rights and humanitarian responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan Eliasson. Now I would like to introduce Manuel Urena. He is the head of the school.
Head of the school, principal.
Right, the principal.
I had a kid call me the president the other day.
Yeah. So.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to thank the members of the United Nations, ambassadors to the United Nations, Ambassador Per Thöresson, Permanent Swedish Mission to the United Nations, Executive Director Sarah Bohman, the Raoul Wallenberg Academy, and Michelle Oshland for the wonderful opportunity to not only speak before you, but also have our students present here at the United Nations, an institution that is rich in the promotion of peace and human rights. The United Nations came into being in 1945, shortly after the end of World War II. And after World War II, a committee of persons headed by Eleanor Roosevelt wrote a special document which declares the rights that everyone in the entire world should have. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In the preamble of this famous document, you can read the following. The General Assembly proclaims the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, to the end that every individual and every organ of society keeping this declaration constantly in mind shall strive by teaching education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms. Humbly, before you I sit, the principal of the High School of Art and Design, speaking at the United Nations, and you may ask, what does he and his school have to do with the promotion of human rights? And I'm here to tell you that art and design has everything to do with human rights. It is one of the pillars supporting it, and thus it is fitting that I speak to you before you in representing this wonderful institution of knowledge as it celebrates 80 years, its 80th anniversary, in conjunction with Sweden celebrating 250 years of freedom of speech, and the Raoul Wallenberg Academy celebrating 10 years of promoting awareness of human rights. Art and Design was founded in 1936. Its mission is not only to educate students in the traditional academic realm, but also help students fulfill their creative potential. We help them hone their artistic skills in the creation of masterpieces. And at the heart of each masterpiece is creative expression. Thus, we at Art and Design have an important mission: to enable students to become independent thinkers and artists who promote the core values inherent in art, one of them being freedom of expression. We're not unique in this endeavor. All schools here in the United States and around the world have that responsibility. Many think that the protection of human rights is only secured through force. While force may be needed at times to ensure that people around the world enjoy these rights, a more powerful and effective weapon is required at all times, and that is education. You see, through education, we're able to ensure that future generations not only become critical thinkers, but also guardians of human rights. Notice how the quote I read earlier from the preamble of the Declaration of Human Rights also refers to education being the vehicle that enables us to promote human rights. It uses the words, shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms. Ironically, many around the world and here in the United States take it for granted. You see, education is not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed everywhere, and thus that tool used to secure human rights does not exist in all parts of the world. Therefore, we have a moral imperative to raise awareness on human rights via education and also through our young children, many of them here today. You may ask how art fits into this picture of promoting awareness for human rights, and I'm here to tell you that art is more than just an object created by someone using their preferred medium. Art is a universal language that transcends the formidable barriers of culture, language, geography, age, religion, and time by communicating emotion, a commonality we share as human beings. The famous Russian writer Leo Tolstoy wrote about this in his book, What is Art? There he wrote, great works of art are only great because they are accessible and comprehensible to everyone. His words reflect understanding that art can be a powerful tool in conveying messages to all human beings. Think about it. All artists have the power to convey messages and feelings to others around the world through their art, regardless of what country, religion, age, language, or creed is connected to the viewer. The impact of the artist is magnified in today's world when considering the power of social media, the internet, and the proliferation of smartphones, as we heard about earlier. Those are the tools that previous generations did not have at their disposal. Now imagine art and design students creating documentaries, posters through graphic design, paintings, sketches, taking pictures, fashion, etc., and posting them on social media in order to increase awareness about human rights issues to others around the world. Therefore, it is imperative that our students at Art and Design use their talents to carry the message of the basic tenets of human rights. It makes it even more imperative that those who are the stewards of their education give them the experiences, broader perspectives, and exposures that lead towards being lifelong learners and critical thinkers who are well-rounded. Students who reflect that in their art, students who will embody moral doctrine that goes beyond the self in understanding that the world is bigger than themselves. In 2013, the Raoul Wallenberg Academy started a school project on human rights in Sweden. 30 black cubes, and of course we saw the video and we read a little bit about that piece. They were produced with numbers 1 through 30, and the size was 10 by 10 by 10 feet. And each cube represented one of the articles in the Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. 30 schools, and we heard earlier about the different types of media that were housed there. The important thing to remember is that this is not just metal. It's not a box. The cube represents a microcosm of the world, and we at Art and Design intend to incorporate the different forms of media to translate different perspectives and points of views within the confines of the box, similar to how we all have to coexist in this world with different viewpoints and values. The project has now been going on for 3 years, and now the project is spreading internationally. And the worldwide campaign towards schools has the mission to inspire the next generations to work together for human rights. We at Art and Design are honored, we truly are, to become the first school in the United States to participate in this program. I think we are an excellent choice to become the pioneers in leading this endeavor, as we are also a microcosm of the global society. We take for granted, I mean, the United Nations is here in New York City. We take for granted the diversity that exists in New York City, but our school, and if you look at our students, please raise your hand. There you go. Our students represent cultures from all over the world. And students coming together under one roof for the same purpose. And that is to express themselves through their talents in the arts in a multitude of forms. Through this program, we will collaborate with schools in France and Sweden, and together we will unite and synergistically augment our effectiveness in promoting human rights. Our focus will be Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Ensuring that everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression may seem like a simple and attainable task to many. I can assure you it isn't. The securing of this freedom is adorned with history of struggles and revolutions. Even here in the United States, freedom of expression, although protected under the First Amendment, is not something that's practiced consistently and, of course, guaranteed. And when it is taken away, it leads to struggle and oppression. This is why the Raoul Gustav Wallenberg Academy started this outstanding program. It surely inspires me to do more for others, to do more in supporting the students at Art and Design, with the goal of enabling them to collectively carry the burden of defending their rights and those of others. One way we will do this is through our creative expression, as we have always done. And as the French artist Henri Matisse once said, and it was said earlier, it's interesting that we were aligned with the words that we chose. The quote says, "Creativity takes courage." I am honored to represent our students here today, students who display that courage every single day. Students who will help future generations secure human rights for others here in New York City and, of course, around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorena. And now some closing words from Per.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you everyone for coming here today. It's basically up to me to try and summarize this discussion, which has been extremely rich, and where I think the Deputy Secretary General shared many of his wisdoms. So this has been a unique opportunity, really, to listen to someone who has a huge amount of experience fighting for the human rights. So I will not try and summarize the discussion, but I think what we've learned today is a lot. Perhaps the most important, and I'm now looking at our students, you have to know your rights. You have to fight for your rights, and you have to help others achieve their rights. I think this is up to our generation to make sure that you have the tools and the knowledge to do that. And it would be lovely if any one of you maybe if you have a reflection or a question, now that you have the opportunity to speak at the UN. Do we have a volunteer? Yes, please. Just present yourself and state what you have to say.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Or, I mean, do I need a mic? No, I don't really need a mic. I do? You sure? All right, so my name is Jeffrey Legrande, and I feel like in discussion of listening to everybody who spoke, and I think the declarations and everything that were discussed, it's for the people, right? But by definition, people are people of the state, like a man of the state or the woman of the state. What about the people who don't want to be confined to the state? Like, what about the humans who just live on their own? Like, why can't we have their rights upheld too? Even though it's human rights, it's not human rights because they talk of people, not humans. So I think, how do we discuss that, of getting the people who do not want to be people and just want to be humans?
Thank you very much. It's a very good question. The human rights are applicable to all humans. No matter if they belong to a people, to a country, they are applicable to all humans. But what we see today in the world with 65 million refugees, not having their basic needs even fulfilled, I think your question is really more relevant, unfortunately, than ever before. But so this is something I think you should definitely discuss also when you design your cube, which I think will be done in the near future. It's a very relevant question, but human rights are applicable to all human beings. That's at the core of the Human Rights Declaration. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Sajina Shrestha, and my question is, how do you deal with, okay, so I'm sorry, this is very United States related, especially with freedom of speech. So seeing how freedom of speech and freedom of expression collide and converge, how would you deal with the conflict of people that have these beliefs that aren't really, I don't know how you say it, that aren't really liberal, or let's say that they are really, conservative, and they really don't, I'm so sorry. I can't find the word, but like, I'll bring up an organization, like let's say the Ku Klux Klan. How would you deal with them saying that we have the right to express too? But how would you deal with them since they do not believe in like a whole race of people being people? And so how would you deal with deal with them saying that you're destroying someone's human right to survive, to safety, while simultaneously telling them that they still have the freedom of expression?
Another excellent question. I can't remember who I'm quoting, but I will do a quote. I don't like your opinion, but I love that you're able to express them. I think that it's Voltaire, thank you. I think the most important thing is that basically everybody should have the right to express their opinions. Then, of course, countries and parliaments can legislate, against hate crimes and the things like that. But the starting point must be that everybody has a right to his or her opinion, and his or her expression.
Can I just add one thing?
Of course.
Because it's a really good question, I think. And I've been involved in the CUBE project now for 4 years. And you get assigned one of the human rights to work with and to focus on. But an important discussion to bring into the classroom is how are these 30 articles related to each other? One is the freedom of speech, but how is that one correlated to the article who said you cannot discriminate other people? It's really fascinating when you start discussing the different articles and how they are related and dependent on each other. So really good question, but that's really fun also with the CUBE project that you can find this correlation between the different articles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I think unfortunately we have come to the end of this very enriching and stimulating discussion. I would like to warmly thank all the panelists. And let's all wish the students of the High School of Art and Design here in New York good luck with their project. I'm sure you will make something spectacular out of it. You have already indicated that there are really key questions that you need to discuss. And as you leave the room, the Raoul Wallenberg Academy has been generous enough to give you one of these cubes containing the film that you saw. So let's thank the students and the panelists with a big hand. Thank you very much.
And the cubes are in the corner when you're going out.